get my thing in action. To be, to see, to feel, to live.
That's what's happening.
I put my heart in action. To run, to go, to get, to give.
You're what's happening.
Good day, ladies and gentlemen. This is Megan Carger with the COTO Report, and it's my pleasure to bring to you an interview with Freeman of Freeman TV, the Freeman Perspective, and the Free Zone. I spent several days visiting with Freeman and Jamie at their house in Kansas, and I would like to thank them, their housemates, and their friends for a particularly enjoyable visit. We filmed 2 days of conversations which ranged from his personal history, to Freemasonry, to aliens, to some of Freeman's more unusual and interesting conspiracy theories. We're here today in Kansas with Freeman, researcher, videographer, filmmaker, radio show host, man who wears many, many hats, ex-punk rock band member.
It's true.
And thank you for having me out in your home today.
Oh, it's fantastic to have you here. I love to share my life with you and with everyone that comes by and see that we're all human, right? It's a verb. I'm really glad that you came.
I really just want to get started by asking, what was it that started you on the research path, on this path to making films and to putting information out there that's, quite a bit outside the common frame of knowledge. Everything from UFOs to ancient symbolism to, the callooning of Barack Obama, all kinds of interesting topics. And I'd like to start maybe just with a little bit of your personal history and what brought you on this journey.
Yeah, I guess one thing on that list would also be experiencer. And really my story began probably before I was born. My whole family has been wrapped up in Freemasonry, wrapped up in secret military operations, and then even my mom running from Nazis in Luxembourg and Germany. And so I often tend to think that genetic memory played a line in what I do now and why I got so interested in this topic. Because from a very young age I have been researching UFOs, I've been researching the pyramids and mysteries of Earth, and I knew what the Antikythera mechanism was when I was 10 years old, and it intrigued me. And as I studied and learned and even seemed to be experiencing, because honestly I do believe I have extraterrestrial influences in my past. Me and my friends used to sit around and talk about the UFOs we'd witness and things of this nature, but I don't recall any of the UFOs themselves. I only recall the stories being shared. But so then I start to grow and learn and develop this new mentality about planet Earth, probably, basically straight from Time Warner. It's your Time Warner books that give you all these mysteries of the universe, right? And so the eye in the pyramid is starting my education. I find out my father's involved in all of the things that I'm studying. And this really shocked me. I had no idea that any of this was going on with Dad. And I start talking about UFOs and things, and he's like, well, I was in Project Blue Book. I'm like, how could I know that? You never speak to me. I finally believed that his whole life was top secret and he had nothing to talk about. Because I later find him with Jimmy Carter.
Hold that up just a moment longer,
okay,
so that everybody can see it.
Yeah, there's an arrow just pointing to Dad, and then Jimmy sitting here. And I got a little closer one of Jimmy there. And they were on Killer 1 submarine together, the first nuclear sub to the American waters and beyond. And then I find out that he was in Project Blue Book, and been chasing flying saucers. He was stationed on an island where he had 4 radar dishes, and anytime a flying saucer flew over, it was Dad who called it in. But inside of all of that as well, he's worshipful master of the lodge, and so that's him getting his apron from my grandfather, who was also, a top-ranking Freemason. Actually, when I went to the Temple of the 33rd, they asked me for my family name, and I gave them my grandfather's name because my dad had to leave Freemasonry to marry my mom, because my mom was married. I have a picture of him too, but here he is. My mom was married to the Grand Potentate of Freemasonry in Berlin, and so you cannot marry another worshipful master's wife in Freemasonry without disturbing the order. And so my mom fell in love with my dad, and my mom came to America, ended up getting together with Dad, and so Dad had to leave Freemasonry to marry my mom. So it's kind of a love story as he's yanked from this occultic realms and brought back forth. So here I am, following a thread, following a story that's been just kind of bubbling up in my life with UFOs, pyramids, ancient mysteries, and then I find my mom and my dad all involved. My mom's an Eastern Star, which is like the female version of Freemasonry, and their symbol, of course, is an inverted pentagram, and she was Esther in the Eastern Star of all things, and she therefore had a place on the pentagram in the rituals. But both her and my dad, in doing all of these rituals, thought, it's a bunch of gobbledygook. It's stuff that we have to do just to get along. Dad knew that to wear his Mason ring in the military was going to get him a good position. He was going to rise to the top. He's going to be asked to be on Killer One, with soon-to-be presidents, right? Because they wear these rings and these aprons. Beyond all of this, when I was 10 years old, I was in a drawing competition in the 5th grade, and I drew that picture. I had no idea of anything. I didn't think anything about it when I drew it. I won the contest, and but then that is the only thing I have left from my childhood. I've had everything I've ever owned taken from me. Roommates moving out with all my stuff, or you name it. It's happened. I've lost everything that I originally had. But that picture. I get to college, and at this point I meet a guy I call Alistair Morrison, because he is Aleister Crowley meets Jim Morrison, rock and roll magician, right? And I end up with his entire magician's library as well. Well, he and I are in this honors course, interdisciplinary studies, and a fantastic course, but obviously put out by the Club of Rome. We were taught all philosophies and all this stuff. It was a 2.5-year course that covered all you required. You didn't have to take anything but math and electives after that. But anyway, so I meet this guy, and we hit it off, and he starts teaching me about Freemasonry. I didn't even know of this yet. I waited 5 years between high school and college, so, whatever that is, 23. And all of a sudden, he's teaching me about Freemasonry. He shows me the compass, square, and G, and I'm like, why is this so familiar? I recognize this symbol. And so it finally dawns on me that I used to wear my father's Masonic cufflinks as my space insignia when we played Battlestar Galactica. And I mean, these stories all coalesce, be it Battlestar Galactica being written, or the basis of the Mormon belief system that was created by Joseph Smith, who was a Freemason, right? So here I am in college. I find out my dad is a Mason by that, and then start to question deeper. And this guy opened me to the doors of the esoteric realms and started, my introduction to Kabbalah and to the tarot cards and things like that. And we ended up traveling across the U.S. together. I had started making juggling sticks. I would juggle batons. And I was selling these as fast as I could make them. And I started thinking to myself, well, I could do this anywhere. So next thing I know, I'm making juggling sticks in the park across USA, in Washington, D.C., visiting the Smithsonian, visiting all the museums, things like that, and being taken all over the world. And as we begin to leave, this little black and white spotted dog jumps into the van with us. He had been sitting at my friend's house for 3 days, we found out afterwards. And they had named him Yin Yang. So little yin yang was going around with me while I'm juggling, and I realized that I am the fool card. Because we're going off through the abyss. I had no idea where I was going. I had no experience of like hippies or travelers or anything. All I knew is I had a van and I had a method to make money. You know, these juggling sticks worked. So I just went from town to town juggling and ended up on this grand adventure, this mysterious, miraculous event that taught me that the universe is alive and well and speaking to each and every one of us and leading you, if you allow it, to this path of miraculous divine. You feel like you're part of destiny. So now I've ended up performing the last all-night ritual the Mayans have ever performed, or the first all-night ritual the Mayans performed at the pyramids of Tikal. I've ended up in parts that just made me feel like I was part of destiny. I've hot tubbed with one of Aleister Crowley's relatives. I met King Kesey, you know, Wavy Gravy, and all that, you know. And just the full-on, I'm free. And I learned what it meant to be free. Because the universe made me free. It wasn't anything to do with money or things of that nature. Actually, people would ask me, well, how did you do all this stuff? You know, oh, I was just in LA, I was just in Washington, I was just over here. And you come back and you start telling the norms your tales, and they're astounded. You know, how can you do all this? You know, you're just a guy that, you know, juggles, and they don't even know that much. Well, it wasn't until I was questioned on that I even realized that I was doing something extraordinary. And that they brought it out of me. They said, you know, I was like, well, wait, you know, I never thought about it. How did I go to all these places? I have no idea. I just did. And every time something would lead me to the next thing. And now I'm back here, you know. And so that whole path, and, you know, we kind of skipped over that artwork. We'll have to get back to that, because the entire exopolitics of planet Earth was unveiled to me in that picture, and I didn't know. And so through all of this trip, okay, all of this has occurred, and I start reading deeper studies. I start realizing that Freemasonry has connections to Sirius, and that most of the tales I can find that lead to Freemasonry and their rituals are extraterrestrial in source, or at least from the gods, but even still, as you track all of this stuff, and I became more and more aware. Now, one thing I had been tracking this whole time were the merfolk of Atlantis, and this was something that I didn't see. Well, I hadn't read or been introduced to David Icke or Alex Jones or any of these people yet. At this point, I'm in the realms of Graham Hancock and even Richard Hoagland's website, though none of his books. But I was in a different paradigm, Zecharia Sitchin and stuff like that. And so I got a hold of The Sirius Mystery by Robert Temple. Right.
Fantastic book. I definitely recommend it.
Absolutely.
One of the first that I read, actually, along these lines.
Well, here's a guy studying merfolk, wanting to know about these mermaids of Atlantis, seeing them in all of the art and architecture and even corporate logos and things, wanting to understand. I've been wanting to understand the idea behind this whole thing. Well, then you open up a Sirius Mystery and you find out it's all about the merfolk and the fish people, the Nomos, that come to visit this tribe in Mali, Africa. And
Dogon.
The Dogon.
Yeah.
And they teach them, even one of the things that cracked me up was that they were living in sandcastles. Now, this is my artwork. So what I've done is tried to compose all of my conspiracy theories into singular arts so that I can describe a whole concept without having to bring out all the pictures. But right up top you see is the picture that I drew, and you'll see that later. But here are the Dogon and their sandcastles, right, that they would live in, and this is Sirius above it. Well, as these guys started talking about, they were given a symbol for Sirius by the Dogon tribe, which you will find in the Philadelphia Lodge in the ceiling of the Egyptian room. So if you go there, what you'll see is in each corner of the Egyptian Lodge, in the Egyptian portion, right, at the Philadelphia Lodge, they have both. Mm-hmm. They have the Templar room, they have the Assassin room, they have the Egyptian room, which Zeke actually